Hello everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Civics 101. Today we will be talking about gerrymandering. In order to talk about a topic, first we must define what it is. Gerrymandering is the act of drawing electorally favorable districts to one party at the expense of another. There are two ways to gerrymander. There's cracking, which is splitting up a group of like-minded voters, and packing, which is consolidating those voters into a region. Here we have an example district. You see a blue core with a red outlying area. If you were going to crack this district, you would take that core and split it up so that each small blue section here is overwhelmed by red on the outside. Alternatively, you could pack the voters in which you would put the entire blue district, or most of it, into one large area, and then split the rest of the district up into several red-dominated areas. Either way, red has a significant advantage in how this district is drawn. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution, the Equal Protection Clause, requires each district to be similar in population, which restrains certain districts from being wildly over or underpopulated. The name of the term gerrymandering comes from Elbridge Gerry, Massachusetts governor and fifth vice president of the United States, who in 1812 signed a legislative district map which had one district that observers saw as a salamander, a creature similar to a dragon. The original term was pronounced gerrymander, but the soft G of gerrymandering is now common. Why do political parties gerrymander? Creatively drawn districts happen most in state legislatures or in federal House races, because state executives, for example governor or attorney general, and federal elections, like Senate or presidential elections, use statewide totals. They can also be used to pit legislators against each other, either party troublemakers or the opposite party incumbents. For example, if you had a controversial legislator on your side of the aisle, you could redistrict them into a popular incumbent who would then beat that person and remove them as a source of stress. The same idea applies with opposite party incumbents. For example, Rodney Davis versus Mary Miller in Illinois, which we'll get to a little bit later. It allows for state legislative majorities and potential federal House majorities as well. As of today, September 30th, as this is being recorded, Republicans have an 8-seat majority in the House. A seat or two in a couple of states makes all the difference. So how does gerrymandering affect representation? First of all, it makes the results disproportionately representative. For example, we'll look at the Illinois House results in 2020. They are 41% Republican and 57% Democrat. Illinois was allotted 18 House representatives, and so Republicans should get 7 plus or minus 1 depending on how you round. They end up with just 5. They earned 41% of the vote and received 27% of the representation. In 2022, after redistricting, Republicans increased their vote percentage by 2.5% to 43.5% of the vote, but lost 2 seats. Democrats lost 1% off their 2020 totals and still managed to gain 1 seat. Illinois did lose a seat due to population loss, having 17 representatives in the House instead of 18, but Republicans gained 2% and Democrats lost 1% for a 3.5% vote swing towards Republicans, which should translate to a Republican gain in seats. Instead, they went from 27% representation to 17%. Democrats went from 72 to 82%, despite losing 3.5 percentage points in vote margin. That's the type of impact that gerrymandering can have. I mentioned Mary Miller and Rodney Davis earlier. This is the former Illinois House district map, and this is the current map right here. Rodney Davis used to represent the 13th district. It held Champaign-Urbana, home to the University of Illinois. The rest of this district was conservative enough that it still elected a Republican, but Davis was a moderate Republican for all of his political life, and he won several elections despite not being favored to do so. Mary Miller represented the 15th district. It's extremely Republican, so her record was quite conservative. The Illinois legislature redistricted in 2020, and now Miller and Davis both ran in the 15th district. Rodney Davis had his moderate voting record against Miller's conservative voting record, so the Republicans chose Miller in the primary. She won that primary and the general election in November. The new 15th district is one of the most egregious gerrymanders in the entire nation. It runs from Champaign-Urbana all the way down to East St. Louis. These are the only 2 areas that produce reliable Democrat votes downstate, connected with a narrow strip of land, cutting out as much of the Republican areas as possible. Illinois' map is a textbook definition of packing. This article over here is from 2014, and it shows federal House districts that were gerrymandered. Keep in mind the goals that the creators of these districts have. Here are the state totals for the Wisconsin State House and Senate election in both 2020 and 2022. Wisconsin is a toss-up state. It's almost 50-50 Republican and Democrat. Though the governor's mansion has eluded Republicans since 2019, when Scott Walker was there, they've held the state legislature for a long time. Democrats last held both the state assembly and state house in 2010. In 2020, Republicans won 53% of the vote, Democrats 45%. There are 99 seats in the Wisconsin State Assembly, so only 50 are needed for a majority. Because there are 99 seats, each percentage of the vote should earn its respective party around one seat. With 53.8%, Republicans might expect 55, perhaps 57 seats. They won 60, and that was down 2 from 2018's election. Democrats earned 45% of the vote and ended up with only 38 seats. In 2022, Republicans won 53% of the vote, losing 0.2 percentage points off their 2020 total. Democrats lost 0.7 of a percentage point, and that gives Republicans 64 seats out of 99. Democrats won 44% of the vote and only end up with 35 seats. So gerrymandering has impacts at both the federal and state levels, as we've seen. Can it backfire? Well, these are the 2022 House elections in Nevada. Republicans did well and won 51% of the vote. However, they only won 1 out of 4 districts. This is because Republicans piled up all their votes in the rural northern part of the state and won that district by 70,000 votes. Unfortunately for them, the rest of the map has been drawn such that Democrats pick up 3 out of 4 House seats despite getting 47% of the statewide vote. Republicans waste that margin in the North because you only need 117,372 votes to win that district. They win by 70,000 votes, and Democrats won the rest of the districts by much smaller margins than that. The margins are 12,000, 10,000, and 11,000 votes. What this leads to is theorizing that in 2024, if Republicans put up good candidates and get the turnout they need, all 4 of these districts could potentially elect Republicans if the Latino vote swings enough to the right and the white working class turns out in high enough numbers. Spreading margins too thinly in an effort to maximize your gains is one way gerrymandering could backfire. Another way this backfires is seen in the Alabama House districts. These percentage numbers show you the black population in each district. Alabama has a large black population that's concentrated mainly in the southwest and southeast of the state. This map went up to the Supreme Court, which ruled 5-4 that the map likely violates the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and that black Americans are being discriminated against because they should have at least 2 districts in which they form majorities or pluralities. A new map was created with these 2 districts likely both electing a Democrat representative because of the black populations. So can gerrymandering be solved? What can be done about it? Well, 7 states use independent commissions which have varying levels of success depending on the partisan makeup of the boards. There are some that use only 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans, and those tend to become gridlocked because you have to rely on one of the other party voting with you. Other commissions have used 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 4 nonpartisans, which tends to at least get things done. Some people have asked why the Supreme Court doesn't step in. Well, the Supreme Court can only step in with civil rights, like racial violations in Alabama's map, but they cannot decide political questions according to Baker v. Carr in 1962. And 2 cases were decided together in 2019, where the Supreme Court ruled that partisan gerrymandering is a political question and therefore is non-justiciable. They cannot answer, are these maps drawn fairly? Do they give one party an advantage over the other? The court cannot decide that. One plan to stop gerrymandering might be proportional state elections, where each citizen votes for a party who would then assign representatives. For example, in Nevada's case, the state has 4 representatives. With totals of 51 and 47%, each party would get 2 representatives, and the state party would put out its slate of candidates ahead of time. That would make the representative totals fair, but it would take away much of the representative part in which you vote for people who are from your area, who live like you, talk like you, who share your values. It would be up to each state party to put up representatives that make each part of their state feel represented enough to vote for said party. At the end of the day, gerrymandering is a complicated question, and there isn't a right answer to solve it. That wraps up the first episode of Civics 101. Like the video, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.